Well, hello, creatives, community, and kind folks. Welcome to RPG with DBJ. I am your host, DBJ, and it's not me, it's you guys that make this channel and the subject matter that we talk about the best it can be. Now, for those who do not know, today is World Building Wednesday. One of the best days of the week for this channel, I think. And we've been going through something called the Cutting Class Series, a Cutting Class Series where it's a play on words, where we take the classic Dungeons and Dragons classes and we take the Dungeons and Dragons classes and we cut them apart. We take them apart. We try to back ourselves into a creative corner, thinking that we've already pulled all the resources we can creatively out of something, and then pull just a little bit more. So this week we're talking about the classic Paladin, and i.e. the Oath Keeper or Oath Taker. And Oath Breaker as well. And we're going to world build. Now, one of the rules we have, you're too far ahead of me there, Rickard. One of the rules we have here is we're going to take aspects of the class, even mechanically, and we're going to build a world in which the subject matter we're talking about has shaped the world. Now, it may not be directly shaping, meaning like it may not be that Paladins rampaged the world and changed it, but their existence and their capabilities are the thing that have shaped the world. And the main thing that really identifies a paladin is the oath, right? Now, of course, they do have, like, if we do take a look at the main class functions, they are warriors. They have fighting styles if they, once they get the second level, and I'm sure there would be plenty that would. So fighting styles, they kind of blend in with the fighter class as well. Of course, they have laying on hands in that divine sense. And of course, they don't get any of that except by their oath. And I think that's where that's our playground right there. Now, Rickard says, an anonymous cheerer. Well, thank you, anonymous cheer. Thank you so much. Rickard says, weird world building with paladins. What if you were born into an oath? Oh, that's our gold right there. Okay, so let me do some mental vomiting first. So oaths mean that people's words are important. And I'm imagining a society where what you say has a huge impact on your place in the world, meaning that young children that are about to take oaths may leave their lives. I'm thinking of there may be people wearing or understanding that they can't make promises because if they do, maybe there's something intrinsic in the world that a promise has a measurable physical result in the rest of the world. Thank you there. Thank you again there, an anonymous cheerer, unless you are a bot. Rickard says, having each oath correspond to a rune or glyph or sign of some sort that they have, like a birthmark. Oh, hell yeah. And mind you, oaths don't necessarily mean 1 month, 2 years. It could be an oath of your family line, like your bloodline, or your firstborn, or something of that nature. Like my family has taken an oath to serve the crown, and your children are born and they're like, didn't want to be part of this. And yes, they are born into an oath that they can never escape out of, or may have a very difficult time escaping out of. And the trials and tribulations of doing such a thing, I think would shape this world. I'm imagining even clothing styles and such. Maybe there are times where people wear a decorative gag around their face to represent like some kind of honor or attrition or something of that nature. Yeah. No problem there, Prawny. But yeah, we are a tabletop role playing game live broadcast, man, and you are more than welcome to take part in it. I've got, I don't know, maybe 50 50 different gaiters that I wear. Rickard says, it also says, what would it mean to be born the sign of an oath breaker? Would people trust you? Would they think you're constantly lying? My answer to that would be yes. And could you imagine if the world is acting against the individual that wants to tell the truth, even though they're under an oath of lying? Like, they can't help but do it, and then they regret doing it afterwards. And it's like they can't. It's I don't want to relate it to a real world condition, but it could be something so unconscious they can't do it. Yeah. Cameron says seventh son of the seventh son, or eighth son of the eighth son, like with Discworld wizards. Yeah, you might be born under an oath that was taken so many years ago that your family's just not trusted any longer. And the quest might be to try to alleviate yourself of that thing, because no one does trust you. Even if they do like you, they may be thinking that, you know what, you're telling the truth now, but eventually you're going to turn against us. And you're like, why? Well, your great aunt or something was an oath breaker, and you're living under it. And even if there is no power behind that, we understand in our real world that blood and legacy means a lot. If your family was some kind of criminal or cast out or deposed nobles or something like that, people will judge you on that, even if you have nothing to do with it, right? So, I mean, that makes perfect sense. Rickard says, I'm thinking more random. I'm not exactly sure where you're going with that part of it, but unless you're thinking that there are random, like, people born may or may not understand which oath they are born under. Oh, you say, like, say one out of every 100 children gets born a sign, no bloodlines attached. Ooh, that makes sense too. Especially if, there could be this weird, the oaths could be a self-fulfilled prophecy, right? So if you have a sign if the sign corresponds to the oath breaker, and yet everyone has their free will, but everyone that has that sign is treated like a liar, they may gravitate together just out of protection, so that they aren't all equally punished by society, which might make the thing happen in the first place, which is weird. Which is a weird circle of issues. Yeah, Cameron says, "Ooh, what if the oath was based on the zodiac sign you were born under and the specific birth date?" Oh, whether you can talk like zodiac signs, or is it I Ching, or I mean, there are a number. There's a host of celestial corresponding things where, hey, everyone born under a particular, you know, Mars in moving in retrograde, and and those kind of things, alignments, and I don't mean alignment, small a alignment of planets or times of the year or seasons, equinoxes and solstices and such, and they may correspond to previous behaviors and oaths. But there could be something else to be said for it, that one who was born under one of these conditions, to get out of it, they may have to make an oath that raises them above it, even though that oath might be extremely restrictive. Um, an oath to serve the king, even though the sign you're born under may be something that is antithesis to that. Cameron said, Rickard says, how many of the oathborn would try to go against their oath just to try and say to the world, I am in control? Most people, very few people desire to be categorized basically before they're born. Your mama was a farmer, your daddy was a farmer, your uncles and aunts were farmers, your siblings were farmers, you're going to be a farmer too. And of course, what do kids do? Hell no, right? Even if it benefits them to embrace the thing, a lot of times we like to rebel against the thing because we love control. And that may be that The few that have control, i.e., the player characters, might be running around in a world where making promises and oaths is a true thing, and it could even lead to more uh, adversarial things when it comes to more arcane creatures, things out there in the wild. For example, communities that are safe from fey creatures because they've made these bargains, these oaths with the fey creatures. But when the PCs come along, they didn't make those oaths and they could be in quite a bit of danger. But the people who live on the outskirts, they've made those promises, and those promises uh, may involve having the children or marked, or there might be random children born that are taken away by the old hag out in the swamp or something like that because of an oath that was made 5 generations ago and they're still living with it, you know. uh, Mufus is morning off to work, but I gotta get always just for this. I'm glad it's your cup of coffee as well. Yeah, we for those who don't know, we go live 6 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, EST here in the States. So, yeah, if you're around the world, you're like, what? uh, Rick says, nice save, DJ. DBJ almost mentioned the A word. Yeah, they'll set everybody off. The alignment of the planets. No. Okay, so I think something else we can add to this world, I think, is the public versus private oaths that people take. For example, it may not be, maybe measurement of skill and talent, while necessary, may not be a thing in this world. It's just if you can make a promise to do a thing, that that's where the honor comes from. It's the scrawny kid that isn't strong or powerful, but promises to defend the nation and stands before family, friends, and the gods and whatnot, and makes a promise to do a thing. Maybe that's where social status comes from, or even if there's intrinsic power in this world, maybe even capabilities. Right, the scrawny kid that steps up and says they'll defend the nation no matter what might just start to get stronger and tougher and more charismatic, and everyone's looking at them like, would I take that challenge? And maybe there's even a little bit of disrespect to people who refuse to take oaths. Hey, I want to be in control. You can't tell me what to do. And everyone's looking at them like, what's the matter? You scared? You don't want to make a promise? And you could even start, for the average individual who isn't a paladin, maybe you have, I guess I'm stealing this a little bit from Changeling the Dreaming, where they had different types of oaths, like a wood oath, an iron oath, a oath of stone, where um, uh, the power of the oath and the longevity of them was based on the promises made. So yeah, that could be a thing. And as well as many other things. So we're going to segue a little bit into other character classes, some of the adversaries they will fight, and then some of the challenges, both social and environmental, that they will go into. Kind of like world building. Yeah, that's exactly what we're doing. Let's see. Rickard says, child to a long line of humans on both sides gets born with the oath of the ancients. Wonder if that would raise questions. You meaning like an oath of the ancients, and you find out that there are people in your bloodline or your past that you normally were supposed to have like as a hated enemy or something, and come to find out they were family, or you you follow the oath and propaganda said one thing, but you find out there's something else involved in it. I think that'd be awesome. I hate those people. We're going to have go to war with them because those, fill in any and all words you have that are prejudicial, and then come to find out you take the oath of the ancients, and all those people you wanted to kill are like part of your, like, not just even bloodline, but like they are the motivation for you. Yeah, that'd be hilarious. Ricker says oath of the ancients are lore wise tied to elves and fae. I think that would be awesome. I think it makes a lot of sense too. Why not? There's, first of all, rules wise, there's nothing that means you couldn't change such a thing. And much like joining, say, the military or a police force where there are people who don't have any blood relation to you, but you want to honor those that have fallen before you. I think Oath of the Ancients makes perfect sense with that. There could be many kinds of human and humanoid and maybe not even not so human things in an ancient past that have all been part of a long series of oath takers, and you join along with them, even though that might make you seem a bit alien to other people. I think that's awesome as well. You know, in our own world, let's take let me get in the chat and I'll say an oath that many of you have heard about that goes against human nature, and I think using oaths in that manner would uh, would be a great way to shape the world. Cameron says it's nice to think that most people would defy what they're born into, but many like to embrace it. Of course, there are just as many folk doing what they're born into because they feel they have to, and I think that's the bread and butter of what we're talking about, where you have this sort of Damocles basically hanging overhead of the people in this world, where you have this competing nature of following the tenets of what people said before you, living under the rules of things that were done before you were born and you had no choice, and mixing and matching and juggling what is free will and what is true and what are promises that you can make or not break. And I think that's just an awesome idea, especially when in on one hand you could have three, four, five different types of oaths of paladin together in one nation, and then the politics change, and now they're looking at each other like, we're on opposite sides now. What do we do? Do we fight each other? Like, no, we respect each other simply for the oaths we've taken, but at the same time, leadership, divine communication, omens, or just plain old freedom might make people have to confront someone else and stop them. Um, Rickard says you could then have stories where a paladin tries to take back their own destiny, much like the stories of warlocks who want to reclaim their soul from their patron. Oh, hell yeah! Because especially if the promise to do the thing makes sense today, but the promise to do the thing doesn't make sense tomorrow. It's the 47 Ronin trope, right? Not saying that they were tropish, but I'm saying promise to serve promise to serve God, country, king, whatever. Country turns evil. Do you still serve them? And you become the Captain America of the world, where everyone's looking at you like, why aren't you following the rules? And you're like, those aren't the rules I promised to follow. And you might be the outcast now. And that oath of vengeance paladin that's your best friend is like, told you, here's a black cloak, you're going to need it. Right. Hang out, get some exercise on those knees, because you're going to be hanging out on the top of gargoyles like I am. And he's like, damn it, I guess I will be hiding in the shadows with you, right? I mean, those may be the things that are moving the players in one direction or another, especially if they are like part of a war and come to find out that the war was sparked or spawned by some outside force, whatnot. Yeah. Mufa, I thought you were supposed to be heading off to work. Anyway, it says, I was just thinking, being born into an oath because some ancestors swore into it, a curse as much as a blessing, maybe. Yeah. Why not turn the great capabilities you have into a punishment, right? We joked, semi joked about Spider-Man, Peter Parker saying, with great power comes great responsibility. I mean, in many ways, he didn't ask for that to happen to him, but he got it anyway. And so, when you step forward on the front lines of battle, it's like, I don't want to be here and fight these people or be sent out to slaughter these other innocents or whatever. I just want to stay home. Why can't we just get along? And a blood oath from, if we can go even further with this, because let's get into some adversaries, maybe oaths themselves are the power in this world. And I mean that literally. Ricker says, what other tropes normally tied to another class can be made to work with the paladin? Oh, I was picking with you there, Mofa, there. But with other class types, And adversaries, maybe that's where power comes from. So an example would be a wizard, or let's go real simple here. A warlock and paladin, kind of the same thing, right? Rub off the serial numbers, and they're kind of the same thing. The warlock makes a promise to serve, and in return, they promise they want the power. In order to get the power, they make a promise to serve. Clerics fit into the same thing as well. They promise to serve. As a side effect, they get power. With the other character class types, there are many organizations and factions that where you have to prove your devotion. I'm looking at I'll say the television and movie version of the Yakuza, in terms of they have a physical identity of tattoos, and if you get punished, you have your pinky cut off. Now, mind you, I don't know if this is the real world version of it, but the movie version is very much like that. Being branded, or having your, like you said, maybe not born with the mark, but having the mark itself may be quite important. So I can see lots of character classes having to promise or devote yourself to a particular type of lifestyle. Even wizards may not gain power from spell books. Maybe they have to make wizards, druids, kind of in the same category as well. They make promises to outer world entities or powers or something, just to get the power that they have. And maybe a lot of the end result of not adhering to your promises and oaths, or dark powers that try to tempt you, is that you become the adversaries in the world. That hag used to be a wizard. Maybe those undead warriors made promises to defend their nation even beyond death. And it's not a necromancer that made them undead. Maybe it's their own oath that rose them from the dead off the battlefield to return home to defend their countryside. And so the people there are, putting fluids and wrapping their people, mummifying their fallen dead who are still there trying to defend their nation, where the rest of us are like, they're raising an undead army. And they're like, no, that's the power of an oath, So I could see words being very powerful in this world, that no one willy-nilly makes generalized promises that they just break. Maybe they do it without speaking, marking walls, or maybe kind of sign language, maybe, or something as well. Ricker says, speaking of Ronin, an ancestor who failed their oath now has the Oathbreaker oath get passed down the bloodline until someone in the family restores the original oath. I like that. That's an excellent way of a player character rationalizing, like, I want to play an Oathbreaker paladin, but I didn't break the oath. I'm living under it. And I am now looking to, it is a weird quest, but I am looking to gain back my oath. I'm looking to break the oath that I broke, which had nothing to do with me. I like that a lot. Or, matter of fact, why not just play a character who had broken an oath, even though it wasn't their fault, right? Because remember, we're living in a world now, this world where your fault has nothing to do with the end result, right? It's not a direct line between cause and effect. So someone breaks in the family line or whatever, breaks the oath, you're just living under it. You are the end result of that, and you just have to live with it, which it seems unfair. But I think it makes it a more dynamic world to live in, a world where maybe things just aren't fair that way, which is a shame, because maybe there are some adversaries out there, like fey creatures or something of that nature, where, those trolls might not just be evil. Maybe they are part of a curse. So I'm thinking, like, curses could be a thing where, someone says something on their deathbed and the thing becomes a reality, or an oath or a curse or a hex said to people in a public forum becomes a real thing. I could see something like that as well. my mind's going everywhere with this. Ricker says, just as the whole, you bring dishonor on your family, and dishonor stays there until someone restores the family's honor. And that destruction of honor might become a physical thing: disease, pestilence, um, undead, mutations, all of those kinds of things. A siren or harpy creature might be the end result of 3 generations of backstabbers and liars or something like that, right? And that could be, maybe they want, as evil as they are, maybe they want to be released from said oath, or released from said curse after breaking an oath from 3 generations hence. And on one hand, maybe the public is like, whatever, they're liars, they need to be killed, where the player characters might be thinking, they could be allies of ours, or something of that nature. Or navigating through a world where, on one hand, you're trying to gain as much information as you can, and on the other hand, people are expecting you to deal with enemies of the state in a particular manner. Cameron says druids serve nature, and in turn, it gives them power. I could see druids swearing oaths to mountains or deserts to protect them, and it bonds them to the land, which gives them power. I could see that. I think that makes perfect sense. And even you could go even so far as to say there really isn't much difference between a druid and an elemental and Jinn and treants or whatever, right? Like a druid may be of such power that they can't leave the desert, right? When they die, they turn into sand and they become like a dust devil or something, blowing away on the winds and whatnot. And what a great way for, say, someone who's born in a family of druids to then become and take on the oath of the ancients, because their oath of the ancients are like iconic elemental beings in the world. Like, you could start to mix and match all of that stuff together. I absolutely agree with that. And what happens to a druid of the desert that's on a mission to leave, but they've bonded themselves to the desert? Would their powers just disappear? Which I would say, don't do that. Or when they leave, others look at them like, shouldn't you be back in the desert lands? This is a jungle. And the druid's like, I went on a quest. Maybe quests in this world, the classic going on the quest may be a real thing. Signing on the dotted line, kneeling before, or taking the oath, or, yelling up into the heavens that you're going to commit yourself to an act. And, even the public may even respond, because maybe there's something physical about you, like a tattoo that you get when you took this quest, and they see that the mark is on your body or something, on the back of your hand or whatever, or your eyes have changed color, whatever. And they're like, "Oh, you've taken the quest. Oh, you can stay at my place for free if you want to." There may be something of that nature involved in it. Ricker says maybe there are stages to an oath born. Say you are born with an oath, but it's not active, and things happen when it activates, as well as when the player like clears their oath breaker oath. So you're saying that, like, it's like it's the classic, the child born with the birthmark, right? Everyone has an expectation, but the thing hasn't happened yet, and so as the person gets older, maybe those tenets start to coalesce, the chains start to like link together more and more. And at a certain point, whatever we like to pick when they go from childhood to adulthood, maybe that's the point at which they have to adhere to it and bind it together, or break those chains. And it's the opposite, because if they're born under an oath breaker shadow, the breaking of the chain, or the bonding of the chain might be the original desire, as opposed to breaking it, because the chain's already been broken. That was an awkward way of me saying that. Cameron says, "Oh, that's awesome. Manticore could be a cursed family line, which creates a more juicy myth around their origins. A lot of monsters could be like that." Oh, hell yeah. Oh yes, like maybe 3 generations ago, manticores were like I'm gonna pull something silly. Richard the Lionhearted, right? Like they were like a noble family, almost like lions. Like they wore manes of the lions, and they were well respected. But they to save the countryside, they had to make a deal with the goblinoid hordes on the other side of the valley, and they made that deal. But everybody knew you should like. On one hand, it saved a lot of lives. On the other hand, there was an oath that they would be lifelong blood enemies, and they broke that oath. So maybe they became cursed. So on one hand, they saved the nation, but on the other hand, they became cursed themselves. And imagine that conversation. Imagine that conversation with the manticores when the PCs go to fight them and they're talking to them. Like you could. There's no reason why monsters can't have personalities and histories, and maybe they desire to. Maybe there's a rage inside of them, or there's a like, please save my children. The manticores like they're it's too late for me, but my children could be saved if you just take them. I'll get them out of this broken oath that I'm responsible for, and can you save them? And that might be that's really cool. That's a really cool Mandalorian carrying the baby, right? The child kind of thing. Um, Ricker says when a paladin breaks an oath, there is an explosion of necrotic energy in an area around the paladin, reshaping the land so that nothing will ever grow there, and buildings that were there have crumbled. Yeah, maybe. Thank you very much for going there, Rickard, because I was going to say that maybe the laws of the land are ones that are built on arcane power, meaning like upon my death, I I want maybe a person has such power that they want a thing to happen, and everyone is like, well, I don't know, but if you commit to that thing until death, right? You go before everyone and you go, our people are poor and we need to be fed and protected. And the king's like, we have no money, no resources. And a farmer steps up, and says, no, I'm willing to die to save my people. And when that happens, everyone's like, yep, gotta go. Doesn't matter. We don't have the resources. We're going to protect everyone, right? Maybe there's a power behind that. Like you said, necrotic energy leaks out when they break their oath, and maybe that's the cause of all of these, monsters, classic Dungeons and Dragons monsters in the world. A dragon, strangely enough, might be like greed and avarice incarnate rather than dragons being another species. They might be like tendrils of darkness pulled out from our own avarice and hubris and such, and our own broken promises. And a dragon isn't a dragon. A dragon is the punishment we deserve for the promises we haven't kept. That's a bit meta, but I like the idea of going back a little bit to, I'll say, original dragons, or at least multicultural dragons. That dragons are evil because that's what they were born to be, because they represent us. Yeah. And Rickard says, and by breaks an oath, I mean turns into an oath breaker. Um, that, as well as maybe that oath breaker gets allies that they never thought of. That place that's what's the opposite of consecrated? That becomes desecrated. Wow. The place that becomes desecrated, maybe a dark shadow sneaks up on that paladin that broke their oath, and it's like, don't worry, I will embrace you. You know what I mean? And then all of a sudden their shadow's like a real shadow demon or whatever, and they move off, and then dark powers out there in the world become their allies, even though they've never wanted them to be their allies. Yeah. Cameron says the Chained Lands. How does that sound as a world name? Ooh, the Chained Lands, where I get it that we've heard of Game of Thrones and a Breaker of Chains, even though they had something different. It had a different connotation, but in this context, heck yeah, heck yeah, and That's pretty interesting. Um, Terrence Polito says hi. It's the idea of being cursed into becoming animals that have been around for a long time. In the Christian tabletop RPG Dragon Raid, dragons are the embodiment of sin. Polino, I think I love the idea of like even in our own world, we've associated historically we've associated curses and sin with the darker animals, nocturnal animals, things like snakes and slugs and bats and rats and things. And maybe there's some power to be said for that in this world. Um, yeah, it's omen. Yeah, yeah. Like maybe there is the the reason why it's not that people desire to take oaths. It's that in lieu of that, it's almost like there's a black and white in the world that people don't want to see, but it is. And it's if you don't have promises, if what is it? What's the term? If you don't commit to something, you'll fall. If you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. And maybe that's like that goes under the chained lands, right? Chained lands colon. If you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. And in this world, maybe that's the thing that's been able to save them. We've talked about building world building with classes, and maybe this is where that's come from. You know, the moment. How many times would it take for? Oh, oh, ding! I didn't realize that there. Oh, because I always see you join in in Discord. I didn't realize that. Saying it its own, but anyway, you know me. I lose sight of things. So yeah, thank you there. Oh, um, Rika said was just going to say, take how Dragon Age handles its demons, being beings of emotion like rage, jealousy, greed. Yeah, maybe like the dangerous parts of the world are filled with our own uh, emotional baggage, and the the only reason we're dealing with it. Oh, okay. Sorry. History of the world. The world was a paradise. I know this is going to sound slightly Christian. I don't want to, but the history of the world was a paradise until and the accepted part of the world was nature and all that good stuff, that you would make promises to take care of it, promises to each other to protect each other. But of course, little by little, our jealousies and our own darker passions started to break the promises that were made in the early days. And so now the world is nothing like a paradise. Like literally those dark woods are super dangerous. That swamp is filled with disease and muck and monsters. That desert that might have even been just with an oasis here and there, you go across it, is brutal. Like maybe the whole landscape of the world is dangerous. And the only thing saving people is their word. And so now they are the shield against the rest of the world. And they don't have to be silver armored, longsword, flaming longsword individuals, but I could see that being a culturally, using examples from our own world, could be spread around the world, where even cultures from different parts of the world in this broken chain land look at each other like, yeah, you know how terrible it is out there, like we do. And they're like, yeah, we need to work together, because if we don't, it's just going to sweep across the world. And those, like, instead of becoming someone dying and becoming undead, they might become, or if they break their oath, they become the living embodiment of the dark emotion that caused them to break their promise in the first place. So greed might associate with, I don't know what kind of monsters. There's plants, there's oozes, there's undead, there's elementals, there's fiends, there's celestials. Like maybe they are associated with specific types of emotional status. Like vanity might be celestials in this world. Like they're not angels. They just think they're better than everybody. They're vain. Whereas fiends might be envious or gluttonous or something, something like that. Yep. Yep. Or maybe the emotion that caused the original oath breaking. Yeah. Oh, and you could even design broken oaths based around like the seven deadly sins. Let's go with that. And then current the good oaths. I maybe that's a terrible way of describing it, but like the oath of the ancients, oaths of devotion, oath of vengeance, and whatnot. Maybe they're associated with the good side of those seven deadly sins. I can't. There's a you can Google it with the combination of the two, but yeah, yeah. Ooze equals sloth or laziness. Hell yeah, yeah. And going back to what Rickard said, maybe it's slow. Maybe this it's not a I broke my oath 5 minutes later I'm done. Maybe this is a person whose nose runs all the time, or they eat nasty porridge. They have a the NPC has a trait that is close to the manner in which they will become, right? So one NPC's nose is constantly running and he's like, or he spits a lot, or gets drunk and vomits a lot, or something like that, or it would, I know that sounds a bit meta, but I like that idea. You know, I like the person who is envious of others and sits in the shadows until their skin literally starts to turn darker over time. Maybe it becomes like blotches, and the sunlight starts to affect their eyes because they're always watching other people from the shadows because they're jealousy. They just can't take it, or they stand in the middle of the road just staring at people for no good reason, and their friends are like, "Why are you staring at them?" And they have to be like shaken out of it because they're just jealous of everyone else. And imagine if a loved one is starting to act that way, and you know what's going to happen to them, but at the same time you're like, come on, you got it, you have to, please promise me. And they're like, I'm not making promises, I'm a free person. you know yeah, everything you touch will turn to ash. Yep. Yeah. There's all kinds of things, like maybe there's lots of punishments in the world that are brutal but became necessary, like um, cutting out someone's tongue, or locking a metal brace around their face so they can never speak again, or you must drink this concoction, once a week, that will take away your voice because the things you say are poison, and you can only live with us if you drink such a thing. Or heck, being in that desert world and everyone knows you're a liar, they pin you down, open up your mouth, and drop a scorpion in your mouth as punishment for saying the things that you've done, because that's why the black sands and the sandstorms of pure glass rip through our countryside, and you're just a result of that. So you got to go, or be, at least maybe they're left out in the desert and they become a scorpion styled drider or something like that because of their punishment. Rickard says more like it's an interesting story beat. So much fun to be had with the downfall story as well as a post-apocalypse story, aka after the downfall of the great nations. Right? Because what if people just walking around the ruins of these great nations that were held aloft by lofty ideals, and maybe we as mortals, we can't it feels like we can never attain that level of promise to a people, right? And we're walking around the residual, it's the debris of our broken promises, and it's so difficult in this world to keep our promises together that I'm with you there, Rickard. I think it's a great downfall story that you could tell in this, where they're not walking around in silvered armor. It's all rusted away, and the blades are broken, and they can barely find evidence of these lost nations. And there's people who, on one hand, are trying to attack and take advantage of the PCs, but on the other hand, there's a little bit of evil. I mean, there's a little bit in every evil that's like, please stand up for us, because I no longer want to be as lower than a snake's belly, right? I don't want to be an ooze for the rest of my life. Please save us, please, because I don't want, that. What a strange NPC to have, a gurgling ooze that doesn't want to be that way, but is, and just, I was a liar, but you could be better than me, you know, that, and Omen, Polino says, in a modern setting like World of Darkness, a man looking at you from the side of the road is scary as heck. Oh yeah, just people staring at you, or what if a city is built of lies, and when you go into the city, every single NPC in the city will tell you a lie, and they are sad and depressed because they know they can never tell each other the truth, and the player characters have to navigate in the city where literally everything is a lie, including like directions or advice. How much is it to buy a meal? 80 gold. Well, that's a lie. No, it isn't. Exactly. Maybe it is. How do I find the wizard's tower? Go to the east. I think that means go to the west. you know, like that would be pretty nasty. Maybe in a city of thieves, people are like kleptomaniacs of each other, assaulting each other and stealing things from each other, and it's the same items being stolen from one person to the next, and they just can't stop that vicious cycle. I think that would be a very strange emotional apocalypse, but I'm feeling it. I like it. Cameron says, I hope we all run at least one game in this world. This is one of my favorites that we've come up with. Thanks, Cam. Yeah, I love world building. You know me. I love doing that. And I think I'm really liking this. Like, for example, like maybe we were talking, of course, about being born under an oathbreaker and getting out of it. Maybe there are enemies that are built around your player character. So like rangers kind of fit into this group, barbarians can fit in this group, the warrior classes can fit into this group, where you you are both connected to and enemies of, say, greed and avarice and sloth and vengeance and whatnot. And those oozes that everyone's scared of, you're like, yeah, I know that was a friend of the family. I know that ooze from I was told about that when I was younger. You know what I mean? Or shadow demons come out of the shadows or something, and they start speaking about you and your past or something like, yeah, yeah, young lady, I saw you when you were in your crib. I could have snatched the life out of you, or something like that. If it wasn't for your grandmother making a promise to me, I would have taken your life. And you're just like, what? Like, uh-oh. Oh, you know, or heck, maybe even this is a strange thing to say. What if celestials and fiends in this world have been ripped of their power? And if it wasn't for, okay, this is a weird thing to say, but fiends in the world have no more power because the people have already broken all their oaths. So there's nothing to dangle in front of everyone, because all of the things, they have nothing left to give. So the fiends have lost their power, and the celestials have no power because there's nobody promising them. And so the player characters must bring back the separation between the two, that they're actually running around in the world. The fiends and celestials are running around in the world with like very little power. Yeah, yeah. Cameron says, your grandma's dead. Time to pay up. Yep, because the promise was made, and the minute she died, you're like, oh no, what am I going to do? And the shadow demon's like, I was waiting for this time. Yep. Chained lands. Oh, and yeah, I love it. I love this. So anyway, guys, sorry to have to cut this off, but thank you very, very, very much. Yeah, I'm really feeling this. I'm feeling this a lot. Like, oh, maybe rogues. Sorry, because I was trying to think of some other character classes that don't fit. A rogue isn't just a thief and an assassin. Maybe a rogue is someone who snatches children away from a dangerous situation to be saved. Maybe they're almost like agents for like orphanages or foster homes or something, or a rogue, yeah, like Peter Pan, or yeah, maybe they are the dark element of the world that we all accept, meaning like that person who keeps spouting out lies and breaking their word. Maybe a family hires a rogue to cut their throat. Like, you know what? They're just making it worse for the rest of us. And while none of us were willing to pick up a pick up a brick and kill them, we want them dead. Just do it quick. Just don't let any of us know about it. And the rogue is like, "Fine, I'll take your coin." You know what I mean? That would be, these dark cloaked individuals that are going around doing these pretty nasty things. Like, kidnapping kids is terrible. But if they're doing it for a good reason, or at least semi good reason in this dark, avaristic world, that would be pretty nasty. Like a city ruled by a dragon of greed, and just living under the city, and there's like feeding it, and it's getting bigger, and they're like, we need you, Snatcher. And the Snatcher is like sitting there in his robe, is like, that I'm gonna require a promise. I need a coin from each of you, and each of you will promise. You know what I mean? Yeah, rogues swear an oath to do the dirty work for the greater good. Yep. My family used to be oath breakers. I've taken a new course in my life. I've taken an oath. That would be really strange, dude. That would be really strange. Matter of fact, what if there's fear? If you hear a child crying, that means you better look around and watch your back. A small child in the middle of the road, and you're like, uh-oh. Oh no. I don't know. You could say something like, what is it? Touch the child, feel the blade, or something like that could be in this world. That would be. I'm liking that. Or rogues might. Hey, you break your promise. The rogues are the ones who go after you. Yeah, Paladin, you broke your oath there to the king. Time to pay up. No, I'll come back. I'll make attrition to it. Too late. That would be pretty interesting as well. Or a Paladin's order that incorporates rogues into their group, that are like sent out like the Inquisition. Like they're like the scouts. They go ahead to find out, like they scout, sneak into small towns, and they come back to the Paladins' orders. They're like, yeah, we found 3 that fit the mold. They can barely tell the truth in the moment, let alone hold to their word. And the Paladins are like, great, maybe we can cut off more power to that greed dragon. Well, that might be it. So, all right, guys, got to get out of here. Thank you very much for being part of it. Yeah, Cameron says, hell yeah, child protecting rogue sounds awesome. Sounds like the scariest CPS ever. All right, guys, everybody have a great one. Thank you very much for joining me. Guys, please just like, share, subscribe. Send out a word, please. And by the way, tomorrow, Third Pillar Thursday, you know the drill. Have a great one. I'll see you later. Bye. Take care.